the United States and in China. So probably the two most decisive online markets in the world in terms of size and dynamics. Before we begin, I'd like to introduce our company and myself a little. So Planet Retail RNG is a retail analytics company focusing on the digitalization of retail. So this is not limited to following the growth of e-commerce, but really comprises the entire transformation of the retail sector, its players, and consumers, of course. As you can see on the map, we have offices across the US, the UK, Germany, Spain, and also in India. My name is Franziska Schmidt. I'm a retail analyst at Planet Retail RNG in Germany, where we're based in Frankfurt. I am part of the go-to-market team where we look at the development of retail markets across the world, so be it national or even specific city markets. We identify key growth hotspots in the world, and at these spots, what are the channels to play in? So where to play and how to win, these are the questions that we work on. So this is our agenda for today. We first take a look at the online retail market values of both countries to get a feeling of their true size. Then we dive deeper into each market to see how fast they both grow, how the online segment is constituted, who the major players are, and what makes these markets unique. Also, we take a quick look at some retail and supplier initiatives at the end before I summarize key similarities, but of course also differences. And the further expertise, I'll introduce a few other digital expertise companies that you can address for further advice. And eventually we'll have time for a short Q&A session. So you can send questions to the chat function anytime, and we'll get back to them at the end of the session. And any questions that we can't answer today, we'll get back to tomorrow at the latest. So as you can see on the chart, China and the US are the two largest e-commerce markets in the world by far. So at almost $1 trillion US, China's online retail sales are even twice as high as the US's. And together, they account for 77% of the 10 largest e-commerce market sales combined. So both markets are large and they are dynamic, and considering their scale and significance, definitely worth a look. So although China is bigger, we start with the US because this territory is a bit more familiar to most of us, I guess. US e-commerce sales will reach $841 billion by 2023, so will almost triple in values versus 10 years earlier. In the next 5 years alone, almost $340 billion of online sales will be added, and this equates to a CAGR of almost 11%. However, with that CAGR, the US lags behind other markets' online sales growth, such as China's or Indonesia's. And one of the key growth drivers of US online retail is that the digitally native millennial generation is now aging into peak consumption years. So they will spend more and they will expect appropriate online shopping options from their favorite retailers. Also, a rising urbanization rate and falling car ownership rates, also related to societal aging, favor e-commerce growth. Eventually, the US is still a primarily store-based country. So e-commerce today captures 12% of total chain retail sales, and it will capture 17% by 2023. So let's zoom in into e-commerce sales and see how they're actually structured. 1P platforms, so where the online retailer owns the inventory, capture 2/3 of online sales and so dominate as platforms for e-commerce. However, as you can also see, 3P marketplaces, so where platform operators don't own the inventory and where rather third parties trade, grow really fast at a CAGR of almost 12% through 2023. And by then, they will account for 36% of total online sales in the US. On the right-hand side, you can see who sells online. So these are mostly pure play shops, so online retailers without a physical presence. Former store-based retailers that now engage online, so this is what we call omnichannel, do capture a significant share of e-commerce, so 36% today. However, that will rather decline to 33% within the next 5 years. And omnichannel sales, for example, include sales through click and collect and drive, so just to make this a bit more practical. Looking at the 10 largest e-commerce retailers, we see that the US e-commerce landscape is clearly dominated by Amazon. At $194 billion of sales this year, Amazon represents 38% of total US e-commerce. So this share will rise to 41.4% in the next 5 years. So that means that online sales growth will increasingly mean Amazon sales growth. And what we also see on this chart is that the majority of top e-commerce players originated as store-based retailers. And Walmart in particular is actively developing its e-commerce offer. In fact, it owns 3 of the top 4 fastest growing e-commerce banners through 2023. While e-commerce grows everywhere in the world, there are, of course, some market specifics that make countries unique, so either in their own right or in combination with others. And these are just a few. You'll find more in the US e-commerce report on the RNG portal. So let's begin with Amazon is the one to beat or work with. As we've seen, the US online retail market is dominated by Amazon, which not just sells products, but really operates a unique and hard-to-copy digital ecosystem. And that ecosystem has more than 100 million subscribers. So retailers and brands cannot ignore Amazon's dominance. They must develop clear strategies to either beat Amazon or work with it. 3P marketplaces are gaining market share. So 3P marketplaces are the fastest growing US e-commerce business model. They outpace the growth of omnichannel retailers by a 2-to-1 ratio, but this space is currently occupied by just a few players that basically dictate the rules to play by. Grocery is the next e-commerce battleground. While online grocery is still comparatively small if you compare it to non-food categories such as consumer electronics and books, it is growing fast as retailers are dedicating more time and investment to it, with a particular focus on click and collect and third-party delivery to still manage costs. So only yesterday, for example, Aldi announced it will take its delivery cooperation with Instacart to the entire US. So operating a discount model, so they can't really afford a lot of delivery, would definitely not be in their business model. But yeah, they still try to meet these new shopper demands for convenience. Last but not least, the race to win in fulfillment is in full swing. So differentiation is becoming more crucial as shoppers shift their spending online. So fulfillment has become a decisive battlefield. Flexibility and speed while maintaining choice and keeping prices and fees as low as possible really is the major challenge. So we now come to a few retail and supply initiatives that portray well what some players are already doing to meet these new market demands we just discussed. And at this point, I'd like to highlight that at Planet Retail RNG, we have identified 4 winning strategies for retailers and brands to future-proof their businesses. So the first one is Store of the Future, and this is about stores moving from being purely transactional to social and experiential hubs. E-commerce and digital ecosystem management. So this is about how e-commerce gains a critical share of retail, and this is helped by expanding ecosystems. Supply chain and fulfillment. Fulfillment is becoming faster and more flexible. Shopper engagement and retention. Communication with shoppers is increasingly data-driven and personal, and brands and retailers alike have to react to that. And at this point, I'd like to mention that we'd be more than happy to help also you develop and evolve your very own e-commerce strategy. So we do this by combining our proprietary online retailer and category data, analytics, and also strategic insights. And our customized e-commerce assessments can support the strategic planning by sizing the opportunity and identifying where the pockets of growth are for your categories. It can also reinforce your online go-to-market strategies and investment cases with data and analysis from an objective third party. Another option is to benchmark your e-commerce performance and presence versus your key competitors and really enhance your relationships with your key customers by enabling you to stay ahead of strategic priorities. And of course, we can also provide actionable recommendations on where to place your e-commerce bets. So if you're interested in learning more about our advisory service, just contact us at info@planetretail.net, and I'll definitely show the email address at the end of this presentation. So now really coming to the retail initiatives. I will not cover all of our winning strategies with my examples as we don't have too much time, but I think what I show you now gives you a good glimpse of what's available. So the first is a Walmart initiative. And as I said, they're very active in developing e-commerce capabilities. And this one is about the store of the future. Walmart has launched self-service automated pickup towers for customer retrieval of online orders in hundreds of their stores. The background of this initiative is that retailers are aiming to offer fast and more fulfillment options, but shipping costs cut into online order margins. So in-store pickup and click and collect eliminate some of the last mile delivery costs. Omnichannel retailers can use existing labor, infrastructure, and supply chains for order fulfillment through such initiatives. Another side effect is that the tower utilizes customers' mobiles, and that enables an even faster service. Through that, Walmart is also able to connect with customers in new ways and can improve the breadth and depth of shopper data collection and insight. So for brands, this development means that they have to provide durable and specific packaging that is suitable to automated pickup machines, because they will certainly not react to warning signs like, oh, fragile. So a next initiative, and again, it's Walmart, but this concerns e-commerce and ecosystem management. So Walmart has been massively improving its online operations and has begun to turn into an ecosystem provider to compete with Amazon. The retailers use strategic acquisitions, so for example, Bonobos, so premium price men's fashion, ModCloth, vintage style women's fashion, and Moose Jaw, so outdoor clothing, to build out assortment in previously rather underdeveloped categories, to acquire loyal shoppers from existing brands and gain e-commerce expertise and capabilities. So with these moves, Walmart aims to really differentiate and provide shoppers with a convenient one-stop shop. And in general, retailers are increasingly using targeted acquisitions to obtain talent, expertise, and key capabilities, because very often this is not inherent in their business model and it's really expensive to build these out. So it's more efficient to acquire them. This initiative is about Amazon and its supply chain and fulfillment. The e-tailer has been putting a lot of effort in raising delivery speed and flexibility to meet rising consumer expectations. It offers 2-day delivery to Prime members, free 1-day and same-day delivery, and Prime Now 2-hour delivery. Amazon has also added Whole Foods to its Prime Now 2-hour fulfillment option in selected cities. And that enables the retailer to expand grocery delivery without having to build fresh warehouses. So quite a cost saving. Further synergies between Amazon and Whole Foods will develop. This is what we expect, particularly in loyalty and private brands. So what does it mean? Retailers increasingly operate on-demand driven, and suppliers need to support them in accuracy and flexibility. And that means, for example, that delivery schedules must be met and orders need to be correct to ensure the flow of goods to shoppers in a given time frame. So before we turn to China, I just briefly want to showcase a few supplier initiatives for the US as well. So the first one is on Coca-Cola. And Coca-Cola is cooperating with online meal kit company Chef. And they do it to curate beverage pairings with selected menu items under the offer Refreshing Meal Inspirations. The partnership educates shoppers on why the selection of drinks enhances the meal's flavors. And here we see how brands can increase both product visibility and sales online by integrating with on-trend services like meal kits, for example. The other example is about Gillette, and Gillette has launched Gillette On Demand, where consumers can buy blades when needed, either via text or they can build a customer subscription. So they can, for example, text blades, which automatically triggers a reorder of razor cartridges, and they will receive them within 2 or 3 business days. Subscribers are rewarded for their loyalty by getting the 4th order for free. And we have already talked about the on-demand consumer and how he or she desires immediate gratification and demands fulfillment that fits directly into their busy routines. And this is a perfect example of how to do this as a brand. Subscription models in particular are useful tools for brands to increase return trips. And they are also allowed to lock in consumers to their networks and encourage repeat ordering or ordering within one brand portfolio at least. So moving on to China, and as we've seen, China is the leading e-commerce market in terms of sales. It accounts for 36% of global online sales in 2018, and we expect the share to increase to 41% by 2023. Chinese online sales will reach $2.5 trillion by 2023, so will almost be 2.5 times higher than they are today. And they are already big at almost $1 trillion. So this means that just in the next 5 years, almost $1.6 trillion of online sales will be added. And this equates to a CAGR of 21%. And also in China, one of the key growth drivers of online retail is that the digitally native millennial generation is aging into peak consumption years. And also here, they expect online shopping options from their favorite retailers. And in fact, they already do to a much larger extent than their US counterparts. And also in the US, but to a much, much bigger extent, fast urbanization drives online sales. And this, alongside the mobile affinity, income growth, and vast government infrastructure investment, really drives the number of digitally addressable consumers. But not just in cities, also in rural areas. So Alibaba, for example, works really hard to reach customers not living in cities with its Taobao platform, or rural Taobao, sorry. And also, last but not least, fast societal aging and related mobility constraints really spur demand for convenient e-commerce options. And yeah, we all know that China is aging at a particularly fast pace. So coming to the structure of the Chinese online retail market, as you will immediately see on this chart, 3P is and will remain the dominant e-commerce platform over the next 5 years. It will account for 80% of total e-commerce in 2023, up from 75% today. And 3P platforms are essentially the major driver of China's e-commerce growth. On the right-hand side, you see how omnichannel barely plays a role in China. So most online sales are really generated by pure-play retailers. And this is where you notice how the absence of large legacy store networks can boost e-commerce. On this chart, you can very easily spot that Alibaba is the clear e-commerce leader in China, with sales of $596 billion today. And that represents 50% of today's total Chinese e-commerce sales. However, other than with Amazon in the US, China's market leader share will drop to 41% amid fast growth of JD.com and Pinduoduo. But yeah, admittedly, 41% of such a big market is still quite a lot. So eventually, Alibaba has literally defined the e-commerce landscape in China. So it's really crucial to understand the dynamics and also the strategies of this major retailer. So while Alibaba and JD.com dominate the e-commerce landscape in China, they're not the fastest growing e-commerce retailers. Pinduoduo has emerged to be the fastest growing retailer in China with a CAGR of 58% through 2023. And it was only launched in 2014, and it's growing strongly thanks to a focus on social commerce, customer engagement, and viral marketing. So we're now coming to the factors that make Chinese e-commerce unique. So first is online to offline, so O2O, becoming really essential. So former e-commerce pure players are investing in both online and offline resources to build a really seamless shopping experience for consumers. And the sheer amount of big data they naturally have helps them build O2O models perfectly matching consumer demands and preferences, and thus helps them gain a competitive edge over traditional retailers. A more diversified cross-border market. So particularly in China, the government actively pushes towards foreign products to increase living standards. We all have heard about baby formula scandals in the recent years. And that also drives 3P marketplace sales. Social is a critical touch point. So e-commerce in China really is socially driven rather than search and ad driven. Friends' recommendations, product reviews, key opinion leaders, and celebrity endorsements are really greatly considered when making online decisions. And Chinese consumers actually buy into culture before they buy products. And so they are very receptive to adopting new technologies. So payment, for example, is typically well integrated into social platforms, unlike in the West. And consequently, Chinese retailers are concentrating much on social engagement and content-driven marketing. For example, only 2 days, the news broke that Taobao, so the consumer-to-consumer platform by Alibaba, has launched a video app where shoppers can show off the product they've just bought and share their feedback with other consumers on it. Last point is accelerating rural expansion. Rural inhabitants account for around 40% of China's 1.4 billion population. And so there's still a huge potential for online sales in these areas. So it's not just the really big cities. But as I said, Alibaba is already actively working to target these consumers and really use that source of sales growth. So like for the US, also for China, I'll briefly introduce a few retailer initiatives. The first retailer initiative concerns the store of the future, and it involves Alibaba. So Alibaba is expanding its data analytics and technology to small mom and pop stores in China to develop or help develop a more curated product range in store. So the Ling Shu Tong app suggests products that are in highest demand by customers by analyzing in-store shopper data. And this is relevant because physical stores are unable to stock as many SKUs as online retailers, so this won't surprise anyone. So it is important for physical stores to sell the most popular items to really maximize sales. And there are over 6 million independent family-run stores in China, and that means there's really great opportunity for Alibaba to expand this concept further. And brands really must investigate in which locations their products are selling well, because this can help inform where to push growth, as well as where distribution capabilities might need to be expanded. This one is again about Alibaba, but this time it concerns its ecosystem management. So Alibaba has acquired the LME online food delivery service. And LME covers over 2,000 cities and has a user base of 260 million consumers. The acquisition gives Alibaba not just greater penetration in the food service market and a new revenue stream, but also is well aligned with its new retail strategy. And this strategy is really about redefining commerce through a seamless engagement between the offline and online world. So it's really a blending of these two. And another benefit for Alibaba is that having a variety of online platforms gives it access to considerable amounts of shopper data. And that can drive personalized recommendations and product curation. So what we see here is that Alibaba brings more smaller players into its ecosystem to drive its new retail aim of seamless O2O. So it's important for brands to identify and work with currently rather small players that might later be added to new retail as a driver of store or online growth. The last retailer initiative I'll cover here concerns shopper engagement and retention. And it's about a retailer I already briefly mentioned, Pinduoduo. And its app drives customer loyalty and discovery through social sharing of products. And we just discussed how key this is to Chinese e-commerce. So customers get discounts for buying multiple products in a group and free products for signups to the app. So among many other benefits. So basically, its social embedding has made Pinduoduo China's fastest growing app, and now they have over 114 million users. And many of its customers are in smaller tier 3 and 4 cities, so it's not really the Shanghais in China. And Pinduoduo offers a great opportunity for suppliers to sell in bulk and get access to consumers who perhaps can't or wouldn't shop on Alibaba or JD.com because they just don't have that purchasing power. And its free product offer could also act as a sampling service for suppliers to then drive sales of full-sized items. So the last bit around China we'll cover is supplier case studies. JD and Nestlé have launched China's first AI-based family nutrition assistant, Nestlé Xiao AI, that can answer questions around recipes, nutrition, and health, all developed by Nestlé. And Nestlé keeps upgrading the system based on consumer demand and consumer feedback. So voice is not yet often used for shopping, but voice devices allow retailers and brands to better integrate their ecosystems in consumers' lives. So this will provide Nestlé and JD with significant amount of consumer data that can then help develop new products, solutions, and personalized marketing and offers. The partnership also allows Nestlé to provide consumers with a service that goes beyond its products. The second case study on the right-hand side is about Mars cooperating with Alibaba to produce a consumer trend-inspired Snickers bar. So for this, Mars collaborated with the Tmall Innovation Center and leveraged Alibaba's vast shopper data pool to launch a chili-infused Snickers. They had learned from the data about the growing popularity of mala, so the Chinese word for numbing and spicy. And suppliers must use consumer data to complement products with consumer tastes. And this is particularly important for China because the country is so large that you will have different trends in different areas at different times. So after we discussed the broad e-commerce landscapes of the US and China, I thought it might make sense to call out some key differences and some key similarities to really round it all off. So starting with a similarity. So both markets face an aging population that begins to face widespread mobility concerns. So cracking the last mile here is the ultimate battleground. Also in both countries, digitally native younger population demographics are increasingly demanding the new levels of convenience provided by e-commerce. And as the millennial generation enters their peak consumption years, again in both markets, much of the increased spending will shift online. But of course, the number of shoppers differs vastly between the US and in China. This is very true. Also, both markets are home to mighty e-commerce incumbents, so Amazon and Alibaba, that define and dominate the e-commerce landscape and operate extensive ecosystems. And these are key to shopper loyalty. So you really, in both markets, have to either collaborate with them or develop effective strategies against them, but you can definitely not ignore them. So that was it for similarities. Coming to differences. The largest difference, obviously, is the sheer size of the e-commerce market. So as I said at the beginning, the Chinese online market is twice the size of the US. While in the US, 1P platforms constitute the majority of online sales and omnichannel plays a significant role, China's online sales really mostly come from 3P platforms. And the US features an established and mature store-based retail landscape. An investment in digitalization always needs to consider brick and mortar as well. And China has far fewer or rather barely any such store network legacy as a burden on retail evolution and digitalization. And so digital evolution is much faster, as we've seen. Chinese cities are also much bigger than US cities, and that requires much faster and much more flexible supply chains and automation. And that is, as a consequence, also quite advanced in China. Also in China, the social aspect of shopping online is much bigger than in the US, where people look rather at hard facts such as price and speed of delivery. And of course, they also do or involve in social engagement and do product reviews and that kind of stuff. But the tendency to which Chinese consumers do it is just much bigger. And last but not least, while in the US, retailers and brands have to work alongside data security concerns, in China, data collection is not really an issue, and making use of data is potentially unlimited. So that gives either Chinese retailers or Chinese manufacturers quite a good advantage because they know very much about their consumers or consumers in general because they can actually collect data and make use of them as compared to companies selling and operating in Western markets. Last but not least, I'd like to point you to a few other providers of digital retail expertise that complement our content ad retail R&D quite well. So Essentia is currently creating a comprehensive digital retail conglomerate. So here you can see Planet Retail R&D, so that's us. And we really look at what strategies will maximize revenue growth for brands. And you can combine this with our sister company, One Click Retail, who can really look into the categories and each brand in these categories. So you can easily spot who of your competitors is growing faster or slower than you. On the other hand, you have Clever's Insight, and this is really about what actions to take to optimize products online for accelerated growth. And last but not least, BrandView. So this is a sister company we only recently acquired. How can I optimize price and promotions to drive margin and growth? Yeah, and so again, I would like to make a short call out that if you feel we can help you with building your e-commerce strategy with an in-depth customized online retail assessment, please reach out to info@planetretail.net. Also with regards to the similarities and differences across these very different e-commerce markets I just made, of course, there are many recommendations drawn from this. And yeah, we're happy to discuss them with you to help you actually spot and see them. So if you're interested in more, really happily reach out to us. So we now have time for a few questions. And I'm sorry, so time is already quite progressed, so we can't do too many of them. But yeah, I will give it a try. So 1 second. Okay, first question. So why are stores becoming so important in China when e-commerce is so advanced? That is a very good question. And here I'd like to point you to our Store of the Future winning strategy. So we've seen that stores are not really just about selling products, but really about being experiential and social hubs where people can meet and discover. And this is also supported by aging because, I mean, old people can order stuff and products easily on their mobile phones. But what online definitely cannot deliver is really social touch points with other people. So this is why food service in store, for example, becomes more and more important. And this is also why Alibaba and JD.com heavily venture into the physical space at the moment. Of course, also because physical stores can be used very well for faster fulfillment to enhance local delivery services. So Huma, for example, so Alibaba's new retail physical concept provides delivery within 30 minutes in a radius of 3 kilometers in Shanghai. And of course, their stores support them in that. Yeah, and with that, I'm afraid time is already up. So I'm sorry if your question wasn't answered, which will apply to most of the questions here. But be sure we do collect all the questions that you posted in the chat function, and we definitely get back to you either today or tomorrow, as I promised. So yeah, that just leaves me with wishing you all a wonderful rest of the day. And thanks for listening. And I hope this was interesting to you and that this inspired you a little. Yeah, and we hope to hear back from you and all the best. Thanks.